do this drive, talk about what we've done to this car and our impressions of how it drives since we've done the suspension changes back to stock. Let's do this. Check for cops after you make a run. Oh, there is one right there. State Trooper. Hello, Mr. State Trooper. I wasn't doing anything, I promise. Okay, so driving impressions. That's what we're going to talk about with this. I'm going to take a little run around a new route that a buddy of mine, Jason, showed me. Let you tag along with me. But we've changed a lot of things on this car. When we bought it, the gentleman who had it before us was going to go autocrossing. And he was doing it right. We're doing maximum motorsports coilovers. The rear suspension was basically stock with some maximum shocks and springs, which caused it to sit kind of high because it didn't have adjustable rear control arms. But we found out this car was a Bleakley Impressor car after we bought it, and that is a very rare beast. Bleakley was a dealership a lot like Yanko or Baldwin Motion, taking cars and modifying them before they were selling it to the general public. This car was an Impressor Stage 3 car, which is basically all of the Impressor package. Cam, supercharger, roller rockers, exhaust, gears, color matched wheels, among several other little things. 2-point roll bar. That was standard. Although Saleen put the one in this car, it's actually on the Saleen window sticker. But the Impressor cars are very cool. So when we found that out, it changed direction. Okay, well, we're going to bring this back to its former glory. Albeit with some of the old technology not as good as what was on in the coilovers, you know. We're going back to conventional springs, going back to conventional shocks, struts. So what we've done, we replaced, well, we put the factory style springs back in it, the progressive rate 90 to 93 springs. We also put the car came with Formula GP Monroe shocks and struts, and we bought, because it was only a couple of $100, some Monroe, I guess it was an OE Spectrum. Not exactly pleased with the way they're controlling the dampening of the springs. You'll see in this ride that it kind of bounces a little bit, especially on the shorter jumps. It's not smooth like right now. You'll probably hear a shuddering in my voice because the road underneath the road is actually concrete, so it's not been paved over. This is old Highway 70. It runs all the way across the state of Tennessee, east paint them black, and put the decals we had made on the shocks and struts. Which, by the way, is a link in the description below. If you have a 87 to 92 Saleen that needs new decals for the shocks, we had those replicated. Check out the link in the description. You can buy them there. It's less than $50 for all 6. So check that out. But the car itself, I mean, it's a typical old Fox. This is a typical car with a lot of miles. It fell into disrepair to the point where its history was unknown by the owner that I bought it from. He didn't know it was a Bleakley Ford Impressor car either. And that made him, you know, he was going to take it autocrossing. Why not? He already had all-wheel disc brakes. You're going to change his suspension out, which he was doing the right way. He go have a little fun with it. Some family things came in the way, and had to sell the car. Was lucky enough to be able to buy it. And when we found out that was an Impressor car, obviously it was like, okay, we got to take it back to stock. We're going to put it back to as close to original as we can. But the interior is, you got switches that are hanging out, but, well, wire nuts that you would use at a house holding wires together. Door panels are loose, not bolted down. Interior, well, we didn't have the headrest when we bought the car, but we now have an interior, thanks to a buddy of ours, Scott, to be able to piece together and make this a complete interior, a nice interior, with original material. And I'm big on that. I like things to look, I don't want them to look over restored. It's just the purest to me. I want it to look as original as possible. We're just going to try to take the miles off of this vehicle. So the driving impression is this: it is bumpy. These shocks really don't do that well. I think if I had the adjustable, some kind of adjustable setup on it, it would make it a little more comfortable. The steering, I'll say it, I said it in a video before, which you can watch, of the supercharged car, 1993 number 33 client of ours. Let us do a little work on it, get it up into shape, but the steering is not, I really honestly feel like I'm driving my grandmother's Buick. I'm just going to say that. Like I'm driving her Buick LeSabre. Take your pinky and turn it. You can hear that old Saginaw pump squeal a little bit as you're doing it in the parking lot. That's what the steering in a Fox reminds me of. There is very little road back. Now, I will say this, with the Saleens, it drives better because of their caster camber setup and the lowering excuse me, of the car. It really makes it handle a lot better, and the turn-in is better. But as far as the steering feel, there's very little feedback from the road. I mean, it is typical 80s, you know, the over, I guess you could say, pressurizing of the system, whatever you want to call it, modulation of the pump, causing it to be so easy that you could literally turn it with your pinky. And for a driving experience where you want feedback from the road, that's not what this car gives you, or any Fox for that matter gives you. And really, let's be honest, these cars, they rode a quarter mile at a time. That's what most people did with these. Saleen was out of the norm. They made them a road racer, which is challenging because, well, they're not a road racer. As Carol Shelby said, it was a secretary's car. You want me to make it a road racer? So, I really don't like the steering in a Fox. I just don't. And I'll do my best to try to make that work. I know we can change steering racks. That changes the effort. The 15-to-1 quick ratio makes it easy. You don't have to turn very far to make it turn sharp. And to that, the 90 to 93, they changed something with the steering rack. I want to say they put limiters in. Turning radius is awful in a parking lot, especially in a 93. I know this 90 feels the same way. But the car is really, it's in disrepair. It's supposed to have a Hurst shifter in it, the SVO style. It doesn't have adjustable stops, the old SVO style. It's not like the Competition Plus Hurst shifter, but this car doesn't have it, and it's very loose. I don't like that. It's not confidence inspiring at all. But well. It's been replaced. This car has had a T5 put in it because the VIN number on the case does not match the car. It shifts good. The motor feels tired. I'll just say it that way. I haven't touched it at all with timing, which I'm sure I need to put a timing light on it. It also hasn't, I haven't touched the spark plugs or spark plug wires or anything on it. All I've done under the hood is just remove a few things and put the mass air meter back in its original place. I think it had this old BBK cold air kit on it when I bought it. So I was putting it back with the factory style setup on it. The car's supposed to have a Paxton supercharger on it, which we do have. We've sourced that. The valve covers leak tremendously. There is easily a puddle, I don't know, the size of a ice cream can top underneath the car from it sitting in the shop. And all I did was drive it, excuse me, from the storage location to the shop. That's the last time we drove this car. So it leaks, the valve covers need to be replaced, and we did source some original chrome valve covers because the ones on this car are all pitted and nasty. Chrome valve covers were a part of the Impressor package along with the 1.7 roller rockers. This car has a B cam in it, a Motorsport B303 cam. That was part of the Impressor package. But we changed the exhaust out because the mid pipe was kind of a hodgepodge of stuff. I think the mid pipe that we pulled off was a Motorsport unit that had something added to it. But we replaced it with an old 2 1/4 Motorsport setup. The headers we put on it were a period correct piece, either JBA or Ford Motorsport, not sure which brand those were. And you can watch videos on this, you see them up in the corner. We did all the process of this. Got the original headers from the car ceramic coated and put back into shape, so we got to get those back on the car when we do the engine. So we're going to take all of that down. The car has underdrive pulleys on it, and it almost overheated when I was in traffic up at Ponies in the Smokies this past spring. It was one of those things where it's great when you're driving, but when you're sitting in bumper to bumper traffic, even with the big Griffin radiator that I put in this car, it still creeps up. We had to pull over, let it cool off, and then hop back in it. But it's got all your typical problems of any Fox. We had to rebuilt the front rotors. The previous owner put long studs in, as we said. Long wheel studs were for his autocross adventures. And that's good. He was doing it right. Again, he was doing it right. Doing stuff to make it safe. But we're taking it back to stock. We had the wheels. This car had SVE 17 by 9 inch wheels on it. I think it's a matter of opinion as to what those look like. I'm not a fan of those. I just don't think they look like the original Saleen wheel. And we put the original wheels back on it. We bought, I don't know, 2 or 3 from a couple of people. I want to say I bought 5 or 6. And ended up taking them, and we didn't matter which color they were because we're going to have to paint them red. So we painted them red. You can see that video when we did that. So we've done a lot of work to this car, but geez, there's still so much left to do. I mean, the interior is our next battle, and it's the driver's seat where it's all ripped up. Typical, pretty much any Fox, whether it's a Saleen or a regular Fox, it's going to be torn up, the driver's seat, especially if it's got mileage on it. And that's a challenge with these cars, because where do you find material, especially if you own an 87 and 89? There isn't anything that's exactly like what came in the cars. I mean, there's nothing. There's things that look close, but it doesn't match perfectly because it's all discontinued and there's none left. And what is left, I'm sure people are hoarding. But the interior's in shambles. I know all these switches need to be replaced, which we bought from National Parts Depot. You gotta check them out. Those guys have everything down to the date on their website as to when the cars had them. It's great. I love it. That's the kind of detail I like in a vendor. That's what needs to happen for these cars, especially with the way they're going up in value. But we've got the shifter to replace it. I mentioned that earlier. It shifts fine. I just like a little more accuracy for stuff like that. Everything works on it except for the AC. I guess you could have guessed that. Map pockets are in shambles. Stereo, we did find an original stereo that would have come in the car, but not hooked it up yet. We just put it in. We'll get that all hooked up at some point after we get the door panels and everything back into shape. Then we'll tackle that. I think from the interior, the only thing we're missing, other than a rear view mirror, are the floor mats, the Saleen specific floor mats. The Saleen's making them right now, but they're not making the color that would have come in this car. Two-tone interior, it would have had gray floor mats. I know that seems odd, but the gray seats and gray floor mats. I don't know if Saleen did that at that time to cut costs. They did put black floor mats in the later cars with the Recaro seats. But what's sad is I used to have a set many years ago. The correct ones for this car. And then the way it always goes, you end up selling off because you think, I won't ever need this. And it was worth the money at the time, but now, geez, how expensive they are. But the car had a cowl hood on it too. That was something we changed. I'm seeing this yellow hood, reminding me of that. We put an SA10, I guess it's an original Saleen hood, but it's not really, it's never been finished. It's been rattle can black, and somebody sprayed a yellow stripe to make it look like an SA10. It's kind of funny. The car, because of that, in the rear wing, we swapped the hatch out for the rear wing because we got the two-piece wing for it. We moved the hatch from the race car, thanks to my buddy Matt, over to this car so we could put the two-piece wing on it, because it uses the factory LX wheels, 90 and 91. And by the way, that's a completely different wing. That's not a Ford unit at all. Both pieces are done by Saleen. But we swapped that over, and the hatch is a little bit different color red with the hood, and then the black wing. I'm calling this car Sanford and Son, because my goodness, it's like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4 different colors. So, but we're getting it back to the way it was done years ago. The motor really does need a lot of work. It's tired, especially when it gets warmed up. It really is hard starting. My guess is that's timing and potentially the injectors maybe leaking down. They're not sealing up real good and putting too much fuel in. I got some different injectors to put in it too, so when we get to that point and taking care of the motor, we'll talk about that. There's a simple upgrade that everybody can do with injectors, especially the 19-pound ones, and it's cheap. But the car itself, as you can see, it rides like a log wagon. I really think there's more to be had with a few suspension changes. Shocks and struts are one. The other, I may do some period correct Saleen upgrades. The time these cars were being built, the catalog parts that Saleen had, Global West was their supplier for control arms in the back. May change accessories from Saleen in 93, 94. All period correct stuff. But this thing jounces around. Typical, I think, of any Saleen going over bumpy roads like this right here. Let's see it. And I just think there's a little more left in the suspension that I can do. It would help it ride a little better. But it's your typical bouncy Fox. Lowered car with inexpensive, we'll call it, replacement struts and shocks. But we also changed the headlights. Just turned the blinker on, made me think of that. We've done a lot to this car. The headlights were all smoked out. They were done pretty well. They had someone painted them, sanded them and painted them, and used clear coat. But it's just not a look I want. I like the factory original look. It's to each his own. And that. But the car itself is what runs and drives. It did have a starting issue. I do remember that. I remember right, I ended up, I think I replaced the starter in it because it was, the brushes were hanging up. You could click it several times and it would finally grab and go, but just put a new starter in it. The wiring underneath this thing in the front is a little chewed up where it goes in front of the motor. The oil pan has a little rust in it. Got an extra oil pan. We've got a lot of stuff left to do to this car. Oh, look at the labs. I love labs. Makes me miss mine. All in all, the car itself is has a lot of potential. So I think what we'll do, I've been giving this a lot of thought as I've been working on other people's cars at the shop. I'm not going to paint this car. I'm just going to paint what needs to be painted. Do the black stripe back around it. Paint the hatch, paint the wing, paint the hood. Give it a good buff and polish and see where it goes. Call it a budget build, whatever you want to call it, but that's what my budget allows. I really don't want to get into another blown apart paint because I kind of want to enjoy it. We may wet sand the front air dam because it's got some rough spots in it. The same with the rear air dam. I think we can make this car look really, really nice for not a whole lot of investment other than elbow grease. So we'll end up trying to bring it back to its former glory in the pictures that, well, I'll just show you two in this video. I've shown them before. You've probably seen them, but if you're new to the channel, if you haven't seen the videos on this car, you can see it. Those pictures are from Pigeon Forge in 1992, and they were, well, those three pictures are the reason why we knew this car was an Impressor car. Knew it was sold from Bleakley Ford. Didn't know it was an Impressor. So documentation is key. It's so key. Otherwise, I would have just turned this into a 93 clone with a Vortex supercharger. This one is missing the strut brace. Out of the replicas we had made by the original supplier. I ended up having one made for the car, so we'll put it on at the very end, have it coated properly. I think Saleen painted them. I'm gonna powder coat. But I think we've got all the pieces to make the car right. Just need to find time to put it all together. Good sound. looking for a Saleen shift knob, I know there's a couple of guys that have done that. Kevin Morgan, I don't know if we did it at the same time or if we were influencing each other, but he mentioned one of the Saleen groups, you can buy the shift knobs, just an Amco shift knob that it's a push on for older cars, Datsun, Toyotas, that kind of stuff from the 70s, with just a set screw. You can take that, if you have a good machine shop, they can make a threaded insert, and then you find a medallion, the 5-speed medallion, pop the old one off, 4-speed, 3-speed, whatever it is, put a 5-speed medallion on it, nobody would ever know except the person who made it. But those things are bringing $400 or $500 now. Jeez. As of the time of this video, that may go up in price later on. But we've done a lot. I keep looking at things and reminding myself, come a long ways with it. We've still got a long ways to go. The car drives good though. Runs straight. It's okay. Just needed some TLC to bring it back to its former glory. Thanks for riding with me on this. You know, that's pretty much it with this car. So with that, whether you're driving them or restoring them, always enjoy them. Peace.